Okay, I'm going to go over chapter 11 between now and 11 o'clock, and the rest of the period will be lab. And the next assignment you have, I kept taking it and cutting it down and cutting it down and cutting it down, but it's still long enough. I'm sure you'll think that too. So I'm going to give you all next week and the following Tuesday. So I'm going to give you 3 lab periods in a row to work on it. I've got hard copies for everybody. I'll give them out after we go through the chapter here. So chapter 11 in your book starts on, looks like page 322 and 323, and it's on how to use site navigation and ASP.NET routing. The routing stuff, especially in here, it's only about 5 pages long in the chapter, but it's important that you read that because we're going to be doing similar types of stuff when we get into the Model View controller in a few weeks. All right, just so you know that. So again, the plan is go over chapter 11 today, give out the homework assignment, go over the homework assignment with you. Rest of the period will be lab. Then lab on Tuesday, the 29th, I think it is. Lab Thursday, all right, probably the 30th. Let's see. So lab Tuesday the 30th, lab Thursday, October 2nd, and lab Tuesday, October 7th. All right. Then 2 weeks from today, we'll start going over chapters 11 through 17, which is database with ASP.NET. You won't have any homework from there. We're just going to go over some of that material in chapters 11 through 17. Then we're going to go over chapter 24 from the book, which is on Model View Controller Architecture. Once we get done with that, then we're going to be working on a project as a class that'll do MVC. So that'll be sometime in October. I'm not sure exactly when, but we'll have all November to work on that, some of October, and then we'll finish it up in the early part of December. So just so you know what's going on time-wise. So the chapter, as you can see, talks about the navigation controls and includes the web.sitemap, the sitemap data source control, and then the 3 kinds of controls, the menu control, the tree view, and the sitemap control. Then we get into routing and navigation controls with routing. But if you look right here, this is in the book on page 343, these are the 3 kinds of controls they talk about in here. The first is a menu, and you know what these are. You know, I brought up the program for chapter 12, chapter 11 I should say. So this is the one that's in the book from chapter 11. So those are just simple menus. Now most of the stuff that's in here hasn't been implemented, so notice the About Us, pages under development, support, customer service is under development, product support is under development, etc. Categories, costumes are under development, masks are under development, props are under development, shopping. Notice if I go to checkout, okay, checkout page is under development, shopping cart, that's there, and order products, that's there. All right. Also, hopefully you notice that when we go through that other than the products page, every other page that we go through, like if I go down to shopping cart, notice how it's got the little, typically referred to as breadcrumbs. All right, so those breadcrumbs that you see on there, all right, those breadcrumbs are typically referred to as a site map path control. That's the menu right there. And what we'll get to eventually, so I don't know if they show it in here or not. Let's see, it would be there if they have it. That's actually right there, that's a tree view. You probably have seen things like this before where there's a site map basically set up for a site where there's a bunch of hyperlinks. And if you know where you want to go but you just don't know what the page is called, you can bring up a site map like this. So that's what the chapter talks about, are these elements here. So what you'll notice, and again I'm not going to read this stuff to you, except to say that notice the tree view, the menu, those 2 must be bound to a site map data source control. All right. But the site map path, that does not have to be bound to a site map control. And you'll see this in just a minute. When you end up creating this, much of this stuff is written for you, but if you've never seen this before, this is in your book on page 345. That's XML. And maybe you've heard me give you this shtick before. Maybe Arinda gave you this shtick back in the 157 class. I don't have any idea. But, you know, in the olden days, there was HTML. And then it got up to the point where there was HTML 4.01, and then there was 4.1, which no one ever really used very much. But then somebody came up with the idea that let's not have any more HTML. All right, let's replace it with a language that's called XML, which stood for Extensible Markup Language. The idea behind XML is you create your own control, or your own tags. That's the main difference. All right. It never really caught on. Some people used it, some people still use it. Okay? And you know, when you talk about things like Ajax, the X that's in Ajax is XML. All right, although it's not used all that much in Ajax anymore, but it still is somewhat. The point is, when you look at this, and let's go up to the one right here and look at all of this. There's an XML header right there that says the version that we're using, and to my knowledge, it never made it past version 1.0. All right, this is the encoding structure you're using. But that is the equivalent right there of having like a doc type, for lack of better words. Then notice you've got sitemap here, and it's actually got an XML namespace. That actually is a place out there that you can go to, but right there you've got the beginning sitemap tag, and down there you've got the ending sitemap tag. Those are the equivalent of HTML tags. All right. Then inside of there, you've got sitemap node tags. And notice that it's possible to have sitemap nodes inside of sitemap nodes. So what are you doing? You're setting up a menu structure. All right. And basically you're doing it through XML. As it says, the web.sitemap file contains the XML that describes the navigation hierarchy, all right, of an ASP.NET application. So what does that mean? Well, let's look at it and put it kind of into context, so to speak. So let me go back to this. And you'll notice that when we look in here, there's the web.sitemap. All right, if I open that up, it's going to look very similar to what I just showed you. So you notice that we have in here, for example, we've got a bunch of these sitemap things, all about our company, etc. All I'm going to do is I'm going to come down here, I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to add another one. All right. Now, it says URL equal about, so I'm not going to be able to go anyplace because I don't want to create that, but I'm going to create a new thing in here. Instead of calling it about us, I'm going to call it, that would be some scintillating reading. All right. All right, so I put that in there. I'm going to do a file, and I'm going to just basically save the sitemap, then come back to the About page again. And view it in the browser. It says multiple nodes with the same URL were found. Okay. I've got a feeling it might still give me a problem if I come back and give it a node that doesn't exist, but we'll find out. Heck, let's see what's here. Is there anything that's not listed here? I'll do this. So there's that new page. Multiple abouts were found. So I'll have to go back again to the web sitemap. And instead of changing that to about, I'll put my name there. Hopefully I fix that, but we'll see. What I'm trying to get across to you is actually making making big changes like this is not a hard concept. There it is. Okay. So you'll notice that if I click there, it says the resource not found. Well, I should have had probably, I had to map that up to jeffscott.aspx. It's not mapped up right now. But all I was trying to show you is notice how easy it was to just go and add another option there. All right, there really wasn't anything at all to it. So what the chapter goes over is, for lack of better words, the first part of the chapter goes over how to do this. notice that when you want to add these things in here, so again, when you want to add the preview control and when you want to add the menu, you need to have one of these new sitemap data source controls. So what is that? Well, if we come back over here and I stop the run, all right, and I come up and I bring up my toolbox, I've got to get into design mode, I guess. Bring that up and get into design mode. And there should be something in here that says navigation. There it is. All right. So I can create all those different things by this. All right. So notice here I can create a new sitemap. I can do whatever I want from there. And it's really and truly not difficult. I'm taking for granted, and I might be very wrong with this, that if you're not reading the book, you're at least trying to go through and listen to while I'm going through it. And if you got a chance, you're going through the stuff that's in here. All right. And I realize, again, you've got a lot of homework and a lot of stuff to do, but that's why I'm trying to give you your fair share of lab time. All right. And it says, where will you get the data from? If you've got an external XML file that you've created, you can put that there. It's almost always done through a regular sitemap. So again, two ways of doing it. Drag the control to the toolbox or click the smart tag on a tree view or a menu control. So again, okay, there's the smart tag right there. And what I was trying to show you, and I guess I went to the wrong part, where is it? Somewhere in one of these, wouldn't be here, it's not there. So there's the menu, there's the site path, someplace in here. There's the sitemap data source right there. So you add a sitemap data source when you want to add a sitemap, or the equivalent of a sitemap. What you're going to notice, we've looked at this a little bit, but we'll look at it in more depth and breadth of coverage starting in a couple weeks, is when you want to add databases to your app, you're going to have to add an SQL data source. All right? And all that's doing is it's basically doing a linking up, and it's saying what goes with what, for lack of better words. Here's some of the, as it says here, here's some of the common attributes, and there's more than these. You can go in when you start creating these things, and you'll see this when we go over the tree view and the menu, etc. They'll talk about the basic options in here, but they're not going to talk about all the aesthetic things. So changing the fonts and playing with templates, etc. They said you can play with that on your own if you want. As it says, you use a sitemap data source control to bind either a tree view or a menu control to the navigation structure that you've defined inside of that web.sitemap file. And I just showed you that's what the file looks like. This is straight XML. There's your XML prologue, it's usually called. That's the sitemap or the root right there. So that's the beginning. That's the ending. And inside of sitemap, a single set of sitemap tags, there is one sitemap node tag there that starts there and it ends here. There's another one that starts here and it ends here. One that starts here and ends here, etc. So you can nest these as many times as you want to nest them. Just the same, what we're doing is we're creating a menu structure basically. All right. And just like you can have menus that are nested inside of menus, you can do the same thing with sitemap. All right. Not the control itself, but the sitemap source controls, the node controls. So how to use that? Well, again, when you set it up, there's a menu with vertical orientation, there's one with horizontal. Hopefully you can look at that and notice the difference between them. It's the main menus. Are they done vertically or are they done horizontally? All right, and the major things like setting it up to a data source, etc., are shown right here. And they're showing you orientation. Again, there's a lot of other things that you can do with a menu, and there are templates you can use with menus too. So if you want it to look a certain way, all right, there are some predefined templates. So again, if I go back to here, all right, and I want to go back to, let's go to the About page, for example. Now, I should go back, I guess, probably to the site.master. All right. So you can see how all this stuff is set up here, but if I click on this, all right, if I click on this, boom, there it is, but there are a bunch of controls that are in here that the author does not talk about. All right. In addition, I can click the Smart tag over here, and I can auto format. So if I want it to look drastically different from the way it looks, simple, professional, colorful, classic, etc. So if I change it right here and I tell it to apply classic and I click OK, you'll notice that when I run this, it's going to look a lot different. I might get an error because I tried running the master page, so this may give me an error. No, it didn't. See how it is now? All right. And if you don't like those, you can go in and you can create your own colors. There is a section in there. By default, when you go in and you start to create the different stuff that's in there, all right, notice there are border colors, background colors, etc. It automatically set it to this. All right, but if I decide I don't like that background color, I can go and choose another one if I want to. All right. So you can do these, and you can use a combination even of the different templates, and then add your own stuff to the templates if you want to do that. And again, the menu control displays site navigation data in a menu format as opposed to the tree view. And I thought they showed a picture, but they did, but it was back a few pages. Again, there's the tree view. You typically would, if you wanted to, you could have this on a page by itself as they show right here. Sometimes you see this when they have a site map. Again, you notice this is a vertical orientation. You could have it in as a horizontal orientation. That makes it a little harder to go through. All right, because now not only do we have them have links for each one, but since they're in a vertical way, we also can see exactly how the site is laid out. That order products, shopping cart, and checkout are inside of shopping, etc. as you go through this. And again, here's the major properties that you're going to work with, but there are a lot of other ones. And really, it's as simple as dropping in a sitemap data source and then basically dropping in the controls. And again, when you do that, there are a lot of different templates and stuff you can use, so you have to write very little code. What you're going to notice in here is not only is there very little code that's been written, but other than the stuff that you drop in there, there's very few things in the .aspx files that you have to change. There's the code. Again, it automatically uses the web.sitemap, so it doesn't need to be bound to anything special. It's smart enough. So you typically create the sitemap control first and then drop in the other controls. All right. So they show in here, as it says, the ASPX code next, starting on page 352. All right. And they show that for the shopping cart application. As it says, to show you how it works, figure 11.6 presents the ASPX code for the form element. All right. This is from the master page. Notice that the menu uses the sitemap data source control on the page, but the sitemap doesn't. As it says, this master page is a little different than the one you were introduced to in chapter 9. In that master page, the section element contained the form element, but this one, the section and aside are both inside of the form elements. Why? As it says, because the sitemap doesn't work. All right, the sitemap navigation doesn't work unless they're inside of a form element, so they had to add things to it to get it to work. All right, otherwise, as it says, it looks the same. So as the author usually does, other than the stuff that's in here in gray, this is the same stuff that's in the last chapter. So they dropped in the menu control up here and hooked it up to the sitemap data source. All right. And then down here in the section tag, they set up the, I believe it's the tree view control. All right. So again, navigation controls must be placed inside a form element. The styling is pretty much, they use the professional. All right, so you didn't have to do any CSS. But as they say, it's a good practice to move styling generated into skin and CSS files. Again, especially if you want to go in. What I just showed you You know, coming in here and changing that color, that's down and dirty. You shouldn't do that. All right, you really should go in and have some kind of a CSS class that you associate with it that we talked about in the previous class period. All right, the hardest part of the chapter starts on page 354, and it goes from 354 through the rest of the chapter, so through 364 or so. Notice what it says. ASP.NET routing is a feature that lets you use friendly URLs. And again, if you don't know what they are, what we're saying is, if you look here, this says http://localhost, all right, and then then it's got the IP address /shopping/cart. Well, now it says /shopping/order/cat01. So that's considered a friendly URL because rather than being generic in nature, or rather than having a big query string on the end of that that's got category equals, you know, then an ampersand, and then it's got product ID equals, etc. You put in something like this. So the user can actually see where they are on the page. All right, and that's considered, again, to be much more user-friendly, and I believe it's more search engine friendly also. And they'll talk about that in here, in this chapter. So the first part, you already know this, what a URL contains, the protocol, domain name, etc. As it says in chapter 8, one way we learned to pass data was by encoding it in query strings. And that's pretty much what they start to show you there. It says, in contrast, when you use ASP.NET routing, the data that's passed becomes part of a friendly URL. Some books call them pretty URLs, all right, or pretty print URLs. As it says, one of the main benefits of doing this is improved search engine optimization. That's why friendly URLs are sometimes called SEO-friendly URLs. And again, they look more like this. Now, I'm not going to click that. It says I can, but it's not going to go anywhere right now. All right. All right. It says most search engines will only go this far. Okay. It says, in contrast, all of the friendly URLs will be archived, which means that's all it'll show. Well, that's not bad. That's actually better than this because that's a little confusing. But if you can, instead of that, have something that looks like this, it's better for the search engine. And if a person is just looking at it who's somewhat familiar with what's going on, it's much easier for them to look at and figure out what's going on also. The third benefit, as it says, it allows you to organize your physical files without worrying about the navigation structure of the site. So in other words, you can set it up a certain way if you're running on an individual machine, and if you move it to a server and that server is basically set up the same way as it was on your individual machine, there's nothing you have to change. Those are the benefits right there, and that's what I just mentioned. So this is what they're showing you here as far as it being friendly. On the bottom of page 355. To do this takes some work. All right. It says the ASP.NET routing framework is what makes friendly URLs possible in an ASP.NET application. I'm not going to require, I don't think I asked you to do it, and if I did, if you get to it, fine, and if you don't, fine. There's a couple places on the homework that I'm going to give you in just a few minutes that say, hey, try doing this. If for some reason you run into problems, you know, just skip it. It's not going to matter that much one way or the other. All right. So as it says, to use the routing framework, first you must map your application's route. The route is the URL pattern that defines the page, and the route can be static or dynamic. Well, you should know what the difference between those two are. As it says, the static route is always the same, but a dynamic route will change based on something. So this always is shopping cart, but depending on what you picked in the cart, the dynamic part would be the last parameter that you put in there. As it says, to map the routes for an application, you use the routes property of the route table class. This is fairly complex stuff. The common parameters are summarized on this page, so this is the stuff you're typically going to use with them. And notice it says when you set that up, we're going to look at another file, then you've got this global.asax file. The idea behind it being a file like that and being global is you set it up once, and it's not so much that you set it and forget it, but you set it up once, and since it's global, it can be used by the entire application. All right? I'm trying trying to remember if there is global.ascx in here. Oops. Part. And there it is. We can look at it. And before you go, well, that looks really hard. It really and truly is not that hard, because notice what they're doing here. All right? When we're going to get to this in just a minute, we're saying that basically, if when you go to the shopping page, that's where you are. Underneath the shopping, if you go to the cart page, we want to be able to say we're basically in our route, followed by cart. And the route keeps changing as we go down. So the idea is we want this stuff to be written for us, and as we go in here, we want it to reflect whatever our current product is. And that's what they're explaining on pages 356 and the next page, which is 358. All right, as I said, it's fairly complex stuff. If you had a desire to get into the field and really wanted to become an ASP.NET programmer, you'd have to understand this. So as far as working with these, as it says in Chapter 8, you learn how to retrieve stuff via the query string. As it says, you can also retrieve URL parameters from outside of a web page. To do that, you use the current request context property. And again, it's fairly tough stuff. You end up writing code that looks like this, that they're showing you right in here. I have done very little with this stuff. I mean, I've looked at the stuff that's in here, but every time I try to play with it, I end up screwing it up. Okay. That's why, like I said, you won't have any homework on it, but I thought you are going to be asked to do some work with a site map. All right. The mapping and the stuff that you do in here, you won't have to use the routing, but you are asked to do some work with a site map. All right. As far as the C# code that's associated with this is on page 361 in the book. All right. And they say, well, a load event handler for the order page that has a problem. So it says here, you can do this. All right. So it says, from a coding standpoint, there's nothing wrong with doing this. It displays the right stuff. The problem is the URL that's displayed when the user selects a new product from the drop-down list. It won't show what you think it'll show. All right, if you go from one to the other, it'll still show the first one that you had in there. So what you do is, instead of putting it in page load that only runs once, okay, you check and you see whether or not you're in postback, and then you check the route product ID. Okay, and you come in here in the selection changed. What you're basically doing is, as you move from one product to the other, what that code in gray that you see right here is doing is it's saying, hey, change the URL that appears on top appropriately. All right, and it will do that. As far as using these navigation controls, this is the last 4 pages of the chapter here. On page 362, it says, in this chapter, you first learn how to use the navigation controls without ASP.NET routing. Then you learn how to use them with ASP.NET routing. All right. It says it's important to note we had to change the database that's used for the other application that's in the book to make it work with ASP.NET routing. All right. So it becomes more complex. Then they explain in here what's in this global.asax file. All right. It says here you can see the code for adding all the routes for the route collection in the event handler. Okay. You can also see the code for importing the system.web.routing namespace that's in there. So they go through everything that's in here. Okay, they show it to you, and the author mentions here, says the first statement in there uses an ignore method. That's actually down in here. But the author explains what's going on. Okay, he says, back in figure 11.7, you can see the 2 pages of the shopping cart app that use the friendly URL for your pages. All right, it says this includes the pages that are accessed by both the menu and the sitemap controls. However, the sitemap control isn't displayed using the order page because the control doesn't work with dynamic routes unless you create a special provider for it. So what they're showing here is that special provider that's provided for it in the global.asax file. It says here you see the code for adding all the routes that are in the collection, and that's what they're showing right there. And notice again, it says we have to use that namespace when we're doing it. All right, so we're doing the registration here, and then right here, what it says is, for whatever reason they picked this, it says we want to ignore any ASP.NET files that end with a .axd, all right, extension. I don't even remember what those files are, so I'm not going to say anything more about them. This is really heavy stuff. So they show the difference. This is what ends up happening. If you look, if you just get nothing more out of it than this is on page 365. Notice when you use traditional URLs what you have. Order, cart, checkout, etc. Those aren't going to give you pretty URLs. All right? But when you add the other stuff with ASP.NET routing, you get this. So you end up getting the prettier URLs by doing it, by creating basically setting up something like this in your ASAX file. I just looked at it that A, I'm not very good at this, and B, that'd be asking way too much to expect you guys to do that. All right. So let me give you your handout because I'm done with the lecture part on here, but I'm going to go and just leave this up, and what I have in here someplace is this is your next assignment. So I've got your copies for everybody. I'm going to pass those out, and then we'll get back and go through them. Tuesday, all next Thursday, and the following Tuesday. So let's go over what's in here right now. All right, there's 10 pages on it, but 4 of the pages are just diagrams of what you're going to be creating. So the first thing you do is you create a master page. Okay? The master page is only, it's not going to have all this stuff in it. If you please look up on the screen because I want to make sure you understand this. The master page is going to have this for a heading, right there. Okay? And it's going to have that for a footer. Does that make sense? So when you first start, that's basically all that you're creating in here. So create a new empty website called reservation, copy, and what you're going to see is some of the stuff I've already provided for you. All right? So I've already got the CSS, so you don't have to worry about writing that. Okay? So there's 2 files in there, main.css and request.css. So create a styles folder or else grab that whole folder and just copy it to your project. Either way will work. All right, whatever is easier for you. All right, change the IDs as shown. Add this header, add this footer, but I just showed you what those were. Drop the main.css into the master page, and it tells you how to enclose it and how to set it up. I'm not going to run through that with you right now. All right, this is actually the first page that you're going to be creating. This is the reservations page. So you might want to literally write on your piece of paper. All right, so this is what, page 2. So turn the first page over and write, this is reservations.aspx right here. All right. So what are you going to have? You're going to base this off of the master page. All right, you're going to base this off of the master page, and that's going to be your master page header, and that's going to be your master page footer. And then this is the rest of it, your content area. So notice what you're going to add here. You're going to add like an I don't know if this is an H1 or an H2 tag. I think it's an H1 that says reservation request. Then underneath it, this is a validation summary. Please look. This right here, that's one of those validation summary controls. That's all you have to put in it means that the field is required. That's all that you have to add to it. All right? All the individual things you're going to just put in there as regular controls. We'll talk about those in just a minute. All right, so you'll put some headings in here, request, data, special. I think you can all build this form. I really do. And I don't think you're going to have a lot of problems building it. Okay? Text box, drop down. The number of people is between 1 and 4. All right? And the bed type, set that up as a radio button group. King, 2 queens, or a queen. Special request, so if the person was I don't know. They needed a, you know, some hotels still have smoking, most don't, but that would have been more back in the day when you needed a smoking room or you needed a non-smoking room. If you have any other thing, you could put that in there. Then there's the contact information. First name, last name, email, address, telephone number, and preferred way. Now let's talk about in here what you have to put in. All right. So let's assume you put absolutely nothing in here. You with me? So you create this form. You put nothing in that checkbox, that text box. Nothing in that text box. You leave that blank. You leave this blank. You leave this blank. You leave this blank. You leave this blank. All right. Well, you'll notice that right now, yeah, these are going to be required fields, but there's something in both of them, and that's why it doesn't show anything there. So arrival date's a required field. Departure date's a required field. First name is a required field. Last name is a required field. Address is a required field. Telephone number is a required field. Those 5 things. The 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 things, I guess. All those things that you put in inside of text boxes are required. You know how to set them up and make them required fields. All right? And all you need there is basically the asterisk. Okay? If you want, don't even put anything else in there for the required part. That's fine. Now, let's talk about what else you need. Well, you need to put an arrival date in there. Okay? Let's say you put an arrival date, but you put in a departure date, as they've done here. That doesn't make any sense. When are you checking in? I'm checking in on July 30th, 2013. When are you checking out? I'm checking out 5 days before I checked in. Okay, that doesn't make sense. All right, so these two should have really been flipped. Had they been flipped, you wouldn't have gotten the message. So you're going to have to put in here, all right, this is not only are you going to need a required field, you're going to need a compare validator right there that says this field, arrival date, is of type date. Then you're going to need not only a required field here, but you're going to need a compare validator for departure date that says the departure date must be greater than what? The arrival date. And both of these must be type date. Does that make sense? I'm going to run through these and I'll take your question. First name, it's just required, so you got to put something in there. Last name, it's required, so you got to put something in there. Here, we want to use the regular expression validator because we already have one for email address, right? Here we want to use the regular expression validator because we already have one for phone number. Does all that stuff make sense? Questions on that? All right, Travis got a question. I would say that the set arrival date should be today when you think about it. Oh, I don't think there's anything that's written on that in here because we're not actually creating a bill for them. All right, we're just giving them a reservation. I mean, if you want to do that and you want to set a maximum there, you know, I would think that you probably, if you go to a hotel, 2 weeks. So if you go someplace on a vacation, I did that once. I took my family we went to Hershey, Pennsylvania, and we booked a hotel for 10 days. That's the longest I've ever stayed any place in my life other than my home, all right, or an apartment. But if you want to make it something like that, that's fine. Again, that's not that important. But I do want it set up so the departure date cannot be before the arrival date. In other words, the departure date must be 1 or more days past the arrival date. Does all that stuff make sense? Okay. Then this is the explanation for all the stuff you got to do. First, set the properties, set it basically the equivalent of an autofocus, so when you start, you want the cursor to be right here. Different ways you can do that. There is an autofocus type of thing. There's also setting tab index to 0. You can do both. All right. All right. Also, remember this back from last semester? All right, granted, Teresa wasn't in the class, but for the rest of you, for your buttons, so if you click on the form, if you look up on the screen here, if I click on a blank spot on the form, in fact, let's show it to you. Show it to you this way. All right. I don't know if you remember this from last semester or not. Here's my About page. Okay? And I've screwed it up by putting all that stuff in there, but I don't want the About. I need a different one. I need the Cart page. Cart or Checkout, one of those would work. All right, let's bring in the Cart page here. Okay? So I've got Remove Cart, I've got Empty Cart, I've got Continue Shopping, and I've got Checkout. All right? Hopefully you remember this from last semester. But if I click on a blank spot in the form, So I click over there, so I've got the form. Remember that there's these two things that are over here for the form, and it's, where do I have to check to click? All right, I'm in a content page. I don't want to be in there. What I'm getting to is this. All right, remember that there's a cancel button and an accept button. Remember that from last year? The cancel button is what fires if you hit the escape key. The accept button is what fires if you hit the enter key. All right, all I want you to do is to come in and set the cancel button all right, so where is it? Set the cancel button with the clear button and set the submit button with the enter button. Again, if you're working on that and you get to that point and it doesn't work, let me know, okay? Again, add a validation summary at the top. All that's going to do is just display this message. Means that asterisk means that the data, that the field is required, and it should be read like that. You want to bold it, but you don't have to. Add required field validators to the right of arrival date, departure date, first name, last name, email address, and telephone number. That's the 6 fields I just showed you. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So add required field validators to these 6 text boxes. All right. The initial message should just be an asterisk. Okay. To format all the validators so they display in red, add a rule set in the request.css file. What does that mean? Well, one of the files that you got with you was there. That's request.css. If I open that in here, all right, all I have to do basically is come in here to the bottom, dot validator, font, color, I think it's just color, isn't it? Color, pound, FF0000. And if I want to font, weight, bold. That's literally all you have to add for that. Does that make sense? That just says if I've got a class called validator, what I want to put in there is I want to make it red and I want it to be bolded. Okay? If you don't like that, you know, there are different versions of red you can use, so you don't have to use FF00. If you don't want it bolded, you don't have to make it bolded. I don't care. All right? But it should, when you get done, at least somewhat, it should resemble that as far as color. Okay? You can make the font bigger if you want. You can do whatever you want to do with it. All right, and that's what they're telling you to do here. Then, because it's your favorite, you know it, you love it. Since you're starting it as a blank project, use NuGet to add the unobtrusive validation. All right. All right. Then run it and see what you've done so far, and it tells you what it should look like. Then enter valid values and run it again, and it should actually work then. All right. Now, when you run this, if you look up on the screen here, everybody, because this isn't explained well in the instructions, but if I run this and I put something valid into everything here, and I click submit, there should be a little message that comes down here that says something like, "Thank you. We will email you, your confirmation soon." Something like that. And what color should it be in? Green. That's basically symbolizing success. So just add right down here, add a label. I should have put it in. I guess I left it out. Does that make sense though? So down here have a label that says something like, "Thank you for your order. You will receive an email verification soon." Something, whatever you want to say. But, have it be over 2 lines. "Thank you for your order" on 1 line. And then underneath it something like, "We will send you an email verification of your order soon." So again, something like that. And again, let me shrink the font way down. All right, yeah, it's smaller than it needs to be. But so what I'm saying is you want that to go in here. So right underneath the buttons. Does that make sense? I'm working with a PDF, so I don't have the information where I can go in there and change it. Make sense to everybody? Okay. All right. Then finish the coding. You know, again, add that stuff. There's very little code that you have to write in here, just so you know, very little. All right. Code a load event handler. This is how you can get the current date. Oh, there it was. Thank you for your request. We will get back to you within 24 hours. Again, you want to say that. You want to say we'll email you, whatever you want. Please don't write stupid stuff, because you know sometimes I've had people do that. You know, I had a guy that for whatever reason he always used the word dickweed every time he wrote an application, and he would say something like, "Thank you, dickweed. We'll get back to you soon." And the thing is, if somebody ever asks for an example of your work and you send them this and you forget to change that, you look stupid. I look stupid because I allowed you to do it, but you look stupid. All right. All right. Then next, because Teresa demanded this, that I'm going to let you use session state. All right? No, just kidding. So the idea is once you do this, and you create this and you fill it out okay, and you click submit, you get that message there, but eventually you're going to be moved over and you're going to get this. This is the confirmation that you're going to get. Notice the same heading. Notice the same footing. Bless you. If you don't like the footing being right justified, make it center justified. If you want it to say 2014, then make it say 2014. I don't care. If you don't like the name of the hotel, you want to change it to Wanda Inns and Suites, then go ahead and do that. All right? I don't really care. But it says here, please confirm your reservation request. So if you notice, all that information that's in there, we grab that from the previous form and we have to keep it and put it in as session variables. So we can put it over here and just print it out. All right. Then if you click modify request, it should basically send you back to the page you were just on, and confirm should actually do the verification. Okay. All right. And then finally you come back in here and you set up a theme. Now this is the way they had it in this book. I don't know why. The only thing I can tell you is Christmas is coming. All right, so with the red and green. I find that just disturbing. Okay? If you want to use a different color scheme, by all means, please do. If you want to use that one, it's fine. I could care less. All right? But if you don't want to use that, use make your own. That's fine. And it tells you in here how to create the theme. All right? And apply it, okay, and then play a little bit with skins, and then finally when you get done, you're going to add this. What is that? That's a menu at the top, right? So you're adding for that both a menu, and you're adding the breadcrumb and a sitemap. Do the best you can with this. Just use the stuff that we just looked at as a template. All right, and with some of this, it's like, wow, history, directions, we don't have those pages. Yes, you do. Literally, I gave you at least a couple of them to start with. So the history and the reservation, not the CS. The history and the directions, rather, what are those? Not very much. That's just creating some blank pages. Remember, that's all you have to do to create a blank page. You know how to create a blank page now, right? So if you decide you want to go a little nutso with this, for completeness sake, let's say, and you decide you want to come in here and you want something under reservation request and something under accommodations and something under services and something under activities and something under about us, that's one way you can do it. Okay, you can just add dummy pages. That in every one of them, just put a paragraph in there that says, this page under construction. That's all you got to do. But what we're doing here, and the reason I thought this was an important chapter, is what we're doing here is we're tying together everything in this homework assignment that's in chapters 6 through 11. So by the time you've gotten through this, you've got a good grounding of ASP.NET. I'm not saying that you've got the ability to go out there and start programming ASP.NET tomorrow. I would, you don't. But you've gone through the major things except for databases, which we're going to do next. And then once we've done that, you've gone through the major things except Model View Controller, which we're going to do after that. So that's the idea. All right? And then this just tells you how to come in there and set all that stuff up. So I'm going to let you digest that. All right? And as it says here, notice, assign today, due, it's more than a month from now. October 30th, the day before Halloween. If you really decide for whatever reason with this reservation, maybe you want to make this, you know, for yours, the Transylvania Hotel, and you want to use all the stuff they use for the Halloween Superstore. I don't care. My hope is you'd have a little bit, I'm going to say fun, and you might not agree that it's fun, but you could put your own stamp on it and do whatever you wanted to do with it. All right, so if you wanted to come up with, you know, notice again, it's called Royal Inns and Suites. If you wanted to find some kind of a font that looked majestic, all right, that actually looked like, you know, they would have in England or something like that with the royal monarchy, you can do that. You don't have to. Please don't get so caught up in the aesthetics that you don't do the assignment. I had somebody do that. I gave an assignment similar to this last year, and I had somebody who did that. They're like, geez, Jeff, you know, my site looks really good. I've created everything, and I've got the field validators, but a lot of the code doesn't work. I said, yeah. And they go, well, it's due tomorrow. But it looks really good. I don't care. If you make it look just like this with all these colors, it's fine. But if you want to change it dramatically, drastically to suit your own needs, that's fine also. All right, again, as always, I wouldn't make it the pervert motel, you know, and have stuff like that in there. Because, again, you may end up using this and showing this to somebody later when you're trying to get a job. But, again, not to pick on her, but if Teresa wants the turtle in, you know, and wants to find herself nice pictures of turtles, and John wants to do something with, you know, that he's interested in, that's fine. All right. Questions on that? Take a look at the assignment. I know you're still working on the other one. Hopefully you've just about got the other one done. All right. That's all that I had.